Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Creative Quarantine Sessions, show number 5. We have a great guest that you're going to meet momentarily. But first, I'd like to welcome back my co-host, Ms. Caryn Novak, joining us from Jersey City.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I hope you're all staying well. I know for those of us in New York, New Jersey, it feels good to see the sun instead of the usual gray clouds. And we're delighted to have Kalina with us. She has such a beautiful understanding of characters. She creates unforgettable sets that truly define a character's identity. And I have a feeling each of us will walk away from today's session feeling inspired.
Certainly. So to give you a little background, Kalina Ivanov most recently collaborated on the upcoming HBO series Lovecraft Country, created by Misha Green and produced by J.J. Abrams and Jordan Peele. In the last 4 years, she designed the films Wonder, directed by Steven Chbosky, and Long Shot, directed by Jonathan Levine, as well as the Emmy-winning Netflix series 7 Seconds by Veena Sood. Prior to that, she earned an Emmy and Art Directors Guild Awards for her designs on Michael Soucy's film Grey Gardens, produced by HBO. She also designed Michael Soucy's next film, The Vow, and designed the Golden Globe-nominated television show Smash, Season 2. She has had a long collaboration with director Robert Redford, culminating in his epic historical drama, The Conspirator, and her designs were featured in Perspective magazine. Other notable film designs include the Oscar-nominated Little Miss Sunshine, as well as Max, Poltergeist, Rabbit Hole, The Book of Henry, Maid of Honor, Brown Sugar, Smoke, and many others. For television, she designed the series Raising Dion, Kings, and the pilot for Person of Interest, among many others. Kalina Ivanov owes much gratitude to her early mentors, Nestor Almendros and Jonathan Demme, who gave her the opportunity to storyboard such films as Billy Bathgate, The Manchurian Candidate, and Silence of the Lambs. She is a co-founder of the Production Designers Collective and on the board of the Sofia Independent Film Festival. Kalina is a proud member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. She brings color and light to all of her work, and we're more than delighted to welcome her to our show. But first, we'd like to play a trailer for her upcoming HBO series, Lovecraft Country. So let's take a look at this, and then we will meet Kalina herself.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's back. Getting reacquainted with old friends.
Uncle George, the reason I'm back home, my father, he's gone missing.
1, 2, 3.
He wrote me. The place he wants me to go is in Lovecraft Country.
1, 2, 3. This place. 1, 2, 3. It's dangerous.
I thought the world was one way and found out it isn't.
1, 2, 3.
I haven't even gotten to the real strange part.
I know we're all excited for that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kalina Ivanov.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I now can add monsters, taming monsters to my resume.
And what a tiny sneak preview of what's ahead with that show. I know there's a whole lot more where that came from.
Yeah, and I'm not allowed to divulge anything. So unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till August. And but it's been it was probably the most interesting and challenging show I've ever done. It was really a very unique and beautiful and incredible experience on many levels, artistically, friendships, just the material itself too. And it's grounded in the Jim Crow era. It all takes place in 1955, but it goes into many more directions from there. And literally the trailer just scratches the surface. It's just like literally, it's just giving you a taste of what is coming, but it's telling you very little about where we're going to go. And I just think it's a very successful trailer in that sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It really does kind of whet the appetite for more. So
what was, I'm sorry, I listened to a podcast. It's called Podcraft Country that looked at the trailer and tried to guess how we're going to go about it. And it's pretty amusing knowing what we've done to hear people speculate. And thank God they're saying we're just speculating, but it was very charming. It was really interesting.
Nice, nice. So perhaps you can use, like I said, I know that you can't divulge too much about your work on the show or share any visuals or any of that, but perhaps you can use that project as sort of a case study to help us understand, for those of us who might not know exactly what the job of a production designer does. Give us some insight into your process on a project.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk a little bit briefly about what is the production designer. I mean, and for the general audience, we're one of the very few artists to be hired by the director. So after a script gets approved and a director is attached and the producers have done their budget, literally 9 out of 10 times, the first person to hire is the production designer, because we create the physical world for where the story is going to take place. And I come from storytelling, and I like the physical world to embody the characters and to support them. And sometimes in obvious ways and sometimes in very subtle ways. But I look at my work as I'm giving you clues about who these people are, where they come from, and where they're going. And well, it's if the effect works, if everything is done properly, you get a really emotionally attached to these characters through also just as you walk into their environments. So my goal is always to portray an emotional truth.
Right. And your career. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Karen.
Your career began in New York, and can you tell us your story? You know, what brought you to New York and how you got started?
Yeah. So I was born in Bulgaria, and in communist Bulgaria, by the way. So, and I know for some of the people who are born after 1985, you don't even know what that means. But let's just say, imagine the world was gray, everything was in gray, and there was only one channel on television that was controlled by the government, and books were banned, and any subject matter you wanted to study, you had limited resources. So I'll give you a specific example. I was very interested in landscape design when I was 16. I thought I would become an architect and a landscape designer. In addition to, I was always very interested in theater. But I particularly loved Japanese gardens because my uncle was an architect, and I had seen an image of a Japanese Zen garden, and it just blew my mind away. I'd never seen anything like it. So I tried to find research about it. Nothing, nada. Only books on Russian landscaping. And Russian landscaping comes from the French because it comes from Ekaterina, and it comes from Leningrad. It comes through the kings and the royalties. but so I got a very good handle on what French landscaping is, which is very formal, and Versailles, etc., that type of landscaping, but you couldn't find anything on any other on Japanese. And imagine you live in that world of where information is there's so little information on anything you want to study. And I find myself extremely confined. I also came from a blacklisted family, which basically meant that both of my grandfathers had been killed by the communists. And the way it went in the system is that your parents got blacklisted, and then I, as their child, got blacklisted. And then if the system had continued, my child would have been blacklisted. And what that meant is that we had limited resources to become filmmakers, for example. We were not allowed in the arts because arts is always considered dangerous, because guess what? We give messages. And so it was a very heavy censored life. And I was such a free spirit and such an independent spirit since a child, since like literally practically the day I was born. And my parents realized very quickly that I was just never going to have a future in that country or realize my potential, put it that way. So when I was 18, we had an opportunity to escape, and they asked me, we ended up in front of the American embassy in Greece, in Athens, Greece. And they looked at me and they said, do you want to go in? Once we go into this embassy, there's no turning back. We can never go back to Bulgaria. And I just said, absolutely. We're rolling the dice. We're going. And that's how it happened. And my first image of America was this two giant Marines sitting at the door of the American embassy in Athens, Greece.
What an image.
Yeah, it really is like, I was like, whoa, even the people are bigger in America.
And you quickly went into to studying theater once you arrived in New York, right?
Yeah, because, but I was free to study now anything. And so I felt I love theater, absolutely love theater. And since I wasn't allowed to go into theater in Bulgaria or film, I felt like, well, this is amazing. I can actually do this now. And by a complete coincidence, I ended up finding the right department, because NYU is such a big institution, and it's in its wisdom, send me to the School of Nursing and Education, where the papers department happened to be. But that's not what I wanted to study. So I ended up on a cocktail party, because my dad was a professor. He was invited to be a professor at NYU. He was a famous scientist. And a woman there said, wait, I just met the chairman of the theater department. Let me introduce you to him. And this is how it happened. Literally on a complete... I really believe that life is full of coincidences and strange little moments that come to you, whether you know it or not, but they are there, and you have to realize them. You have to actually take them and capitalize on them in a way, But my life has been full of so many magical kind of moments like that. And so that's how I met the head of the design department, Lloyd Burlingame. And he looked at he looked at me, and he looked at some of the drawings that I had with me, and he said, you have to learn English. And French was my first language. And he said, and we'll take you on probation. Come for 1 semester as an undergraduate in a graduate program. I had no idea what that meant. And the good thing I didn't know, because it was... Had I known, I probably would not have said yes. I didn't know the difference between graduate and undergraduate. In Europe, it's university. It's all the same. Right. Well, I had no idea that the level of skills of my colleagues was going to be through the roof. And I was just 18, or and a half or something like that. And so, and he suggested I take drawing classes at the Art Students League. So I spent my summer, my first job was selling ice cream at Baskin Robbins. Half a day working, half a day drawing, and then watching soap operas to learn English.
Very good.
If I have a very dramatic inflection, blame it on the soap operas. But that's
and that was an effective method of sort of understanding storytelling through English as well, right? With the soap operas.
Yes, because they, as my mom said, they speak the same thing they repeat the same thing over and over again. And the storylines are very simple. You can understand them, and it's kind of pure English. It's not, it's not tainted with too many, it's not too idiomatic. It's not street. You're learning the proper average American English, basically, right?
Yeah.
So so I ended up at NYU and learned English and survived and learned a lot. I learned a lot. It was a great program. And I was incredibly lucky to have Oliver Smith as the great Oliver Smith as one of my teachers, who was the king of Broadway in a sense. He was like, and the head of American Ballet Theater, but he was an incredible watercolorist and a teacher and a spirit and a generous spirit. And we had nothing in common, literally nothing in common. I was very avant-garde and very out there and not interested in tradition whatsoever. And he was the American icon of traditional classical musicals, Hello, Dolly, and My Fair Lady, and West Side Story, and so on, so on.
Right.
What was so amazing about him, he was also the most open-minded person. And very quickly, the first musical he gave me, he assigned me, was Company. And I could not wrap my brain around musicals. It was not something I was exposed to before. Opera was an operetta was the closest thing I could get to musical. But I just remember telling him, I don't get the voices. They can't sing. I was like, why do they have such bad voices? You know? It was so funny. It was a disaster. My first project. And so I talked him into doing magic flute. And I said, can I do magic flute? I said, they talk. They said, like, there's music and they talk. It's the same thing, right? So after the fiasco of Company, I transitioned to magic flute, but he did a very avant-garde production of it. And as long as you can explain to him of why you were doing things and what was your concept and you were committed to it and you did it beautifully, the execution needed to be beautiful, he was on board. And it was so fascinating because you wouldn't think that. You would think that he would try to teach you in the way he was working. No, he was extremely open-minded. And we had a Norwegian student also who was the other avant-garde designer. So the two of us, we always presented something that everyone was like, what the hell are you doing? But it was fun.
And not to jump around too much here timeline-wise, but you have since you've taught at NYU for a period of time as well in the past, right?
Yes, I taught us, and then I had a baby, and then it was impossible to be a working designer to teach school and to have a baby. It's a little too much.
3 full-time jobs.
but it's great. I went back to the program. Yes, it was really lovely. It was kind of a nice sort of full circle. But anyway, so from there, one thing that amuses me greatly is that I really didn't like what I learned in theater school is that I don't like musicals because I don't understand them. And therefore, I cannot be good at them. I just don't have a handle. I understood nothing about it. And I understand Shakespeare. I understand plays. I fine with Tennessee Williams. Anybody, throw me anybody. I could not wrap my brain around musicals. And so, ironically, I ended up working for David Mitchell as the 8th assistant. He had 8 assistants.
Wow. And
I was number 8. And so my station was right in front of the bathroom. So if anybody had to go to the bathroom, I had to leave my station so they can go to the bathroom. It was, should we just say I was the lowest of the totem pole? But I met some amazing artists there. Half of us were from NYU and half of us were from Yale, 2 very competing programs and competitive programs and very, very interesting programs, very different in the way they approached design. And so it was a really fun environment to be and to see your peers that you would otherwise you'd never meet, right, as an assistant. And I remember a young woman told me, she said, Kalina, you draw really fast, because I was struggling. And I just said, I'm not cut out for this musical thing. I'm not going to be successful. I am not understanding it. She said, but you draw so fast. Have you thought about doing storyboarding? And I just looked at her and I went, can I make you dinner and you can tell me more about this? So I got a recipe from the New York Times and I made her, it was really elaborate. It was quail. It was quail with apricot. I'll always remember it because it was the only time I've ever done it. It was incredibly difficult. But anyway, hey, I was just putting out the best I can. And
Sounds amazing.
anyway, and she so kindly gave me some samples of what she has been doing. And I immediately ran to Forbidden Planet, which still exists. So visit the store, bought the book on Raiders of the Lost Ark, and self-taught myself storyboarding. And literally for a year, badgered everybody I met at every party or anywhere, told them I was a storyboard artist, and I need to be, I need to be a storyboard artist. I need to work for you.
That's great. So today we have some visuals to share. So we're actually going to go ahead and look at some storyboards.
That's not it. There we go.
There we go. Yes. So let's start with Silence of the Lambs. So can you speak for a moment to the advantage of using storyboards and why that's such a helpful tool to have?
Oh, I think storyboards is amazing. I think that just total luck, as I said, like meeting this lovely woman and learning about storyboarding and going into it prepared me to be a production designer in a very unique way. I was already trained as a designer, but what I didn't know from theater was how the camera worked. And for storyboarding, because it services the camera and you're composing shots and you're designing to lenses and to space and to how camera moves in the space, is such a valuable tool. And so when I taught at NYU, I made everyone start with storyboards. I used to give them a music video and I used to ask them to storyboard their own music video, and because the thing that's missing from theater training is the camera point of view. And we design 360 world, and we live in a 360 world, and you cannot think of it only as a proscenium and world. And so it's more complex and more challenging, and quite, I just fell in love with camera. I fell in love with the fact that I could do anything, and learning about camera. And because I fell in love with storyboarding and camera, I went to the graduate program of NYU design of a film school. So I ended up making movies, and my short film was nominated for a student Oscar, etc., and designed everybody's film. So I met Jonathan Demme there, and I had already been a storyboard artist, was putting myself up through it. And when he gave me this opportunity, I never met with him. They simply sent me a scene. And so I asked, do you have locations? Do you have any references, anything? And they said, no. We're in the very early prep stages. And I said, well, can I meet with Jonathan? And they said, no, he's very busy right now. Okay. So everything you see here in this particular storyboards, the first sequence was when Jodie Foster's character goes to the storage space and discovers the head in the jar, right? That's the first scene. Everything here is based on my imagination. There's nothing, there wasn't even a reference given to me. So everything here, so you see in this particular panel, you can see a little mouse running through the keyboard. I think it's this panel or the next one. Is this the one? Yeah, there's the mouse. Yeah. And so the reason I'm pointing this out is because I started just imagining stuff. This is not in a script. This is not in anything. I just went like, wouldn't it be funny and scary if there was a mouse and she gets frightened and, Yeah, yes. So I started doing all this stuff, and in the Criterion version of the show of the movie, at the end of the extras, they do a comparison between the shooting and the storyboards, and they actually ended up shooting the mouse and everything, and ended up putting it in the editing room floor. But they did shoot it. They shot them extremely faithfully. They shot the storyboards. And I know from a friend of mine who ended up being Jodie Foster's assistant, they had the storyboards pasted on the back of the set, every day, and looking at them. And it's great because it was a guide, it gives everybody the opportunity to be prepared and to eat and be free to improvise from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how much visual influence the storyboard artist has on the world of the film from very early on.
Very early on, which is why then as a production designer, I want them in my department.
Yes, absolutely. So
I want them near me.
So let's jump around. Let's talk a moment about Smash. this was a project you came on for season 2.
Yes.
And this was kind of an exciting project for you because of your theatrical background at NYU and studying with, there we
With
go.
Oliver.
Yes.
And this is why it's perfect segue for why I was telling you how I thought I would never succeed in musicals. Eventually, as I matured as a designer, I fell in love with musicals. Eventually, I became more American and I understood them. And so when Smash was offered to me, my agent was like, you should not do season 2. I said, I want to do a musical. I want to do it because they promised me more money for the musical numbers. Not me, the show. They promised the show more. They wanted more money into the show for the musical numbers. And I said, I really want to design musicals and I'm never going to get this chance. I'm not going to be able to go back to theater, but this is a unique opportunity for me. And it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my career. I don't regret it for a moment. This was the first number we designed. We shot it and everything, and then it was cut and redone entirely. And it was really interesting. And this had to do with the fact that I think at the end of the day, the studio felt that it wasn't the right number to open the show with. And we wanted slightly something different for Jennifer Hudson. And they completely rewrote it and revised it. So this whole number doesn't exist in the show. But we went through the whole shooting of it and putting it in the and editing and everything. Yeah.
Wow. So this goes to show nothing is precious, right?
Yeah. Oh gosh, no. At this point, I used to cry when my sets will go in the dumpster.
Oh yeah.
At this point, I'm like, when is it going in a dumpster? Just tell me. Just let me know.
Let's get it over with, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, you just you know, after I've done more than 50 projects. They don't, it's like, imagine if you have 3 children, I only have 1, so he's very precious. But if I had a third, I probably would be like, you know what? I don't care if you're hungry right now. You can wait. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Smash. So
yeah.
you go there, if you want to go back, let's go. Yes, this was a great number. So the way
beautiful rendering.
Yeah.
So I always do my black and white sketches. Because it's the way I have to design. I have to wrap my brain around the design through this way, and then we can take it from there, right? And so what I quickly discovered, because I had 12 producers, we had 12 producers on that show who were in LA. What I quickly discovered is that the black and white sketch wasn't enough to get the set approved. Does that make sense? And we were working on a TV schedule, so time was compressed. This was not, you don't have 2 years to develop a musical number here, or even 2 weeks for that matter. And so what I did is I employed 4 beautiful, talented model makers, and we went to model from this. I got this. I always do my rough ground plans anyway in 1/4-inch scale. And so I think if you keep going, I think we'll see the model from here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what we did, yes. And so you can see how this is what we'll end up presenting. And you can see the transitions, like you can see from the sketch how we transitioned into something, how it changed, how it evolved. You can see what was kept from it and what sort of evolved in it. And what was so wonderful about the models is that I would call, and there's the set, and what we did is we built our own theater. So this stage is on studio. This is not a real Broadway stage. And so we built a stage, we built a backstage, we built a proscenium, and for different numbers, we would change the proscenium to give the idea that you're in different theaters.
Right.
Because we couldn't go to Broadway houses in and out on a TV schedule. And it was really the only way we could accomplish this. And it was just, everybody really, really enjoyed these, it was pretty amazing. But with the models, what was so great with that is that we could sit with the composer and the lyricist and the choreographer and the producers and the showrunner. Everybody sits with the model, and we can play the number, basically the music and the number, and we can see who needed what, and in one place, the composer actually cut a whole musical number, said, you know what, now that I see this, we don't need this part, we're not going to have time, and etc. Because remember, we will shoot like a 5-minute number, and about 3 minutes of it will end up on screen, right?
Mhm.
So you realize sometimes that certain stuff was overwritten, and it was incredibly helpful. And it was really, this is like my theater background coming in, and also just really finally doing a musical in my life. I mean,
Yes.
I love jumping around genres. I'm not the comedy designer or the drama designer or this designer or that designer. I love jumping genres. I want in my career to have had experience in a single genre if I can.
And in the series, I mean, you have an extremely intense timeline you have to work under. What's it like working at that rapid pace?
Very stressful, extremely stressful.
Yeah.
I'm a high energy person, so so I can handle it. But that sketch that you just did with the bridge, that sketch, which became literally the number, I drew in a meeting as we were talking about.
Mm.
So this was done literally as we're sitting in a meeting. I'm drawing this, and a lot of times I would just draw an idea and say to Josh, "What about this? Can you
Right.
do a number for that?" And so, for example, that very first one that got cut, that came from me. I was like, why can't we do a fashion show? There's no musical about a fashion show. There's a musical about this, and there's a musical about that, because we were discussing.
Yeah.
Because we're making fake musicals, right?
Mhm.
We're competing with our Marilyn Monroe musical, but
Yeah.
So Jennifer Hudson her character was supposed to be in competing musicals, right? And so we had to come up with some kind of a story. So you can see, but this is really close. The model's really close to the sketch, but the sketch was drawn very quickly. And I mean, it's on yellow paper and, on a yellow pad in a meeting saying, Josh, I think we can do something really fun like that with a Pepsi sign that's in Brooklyn, or Queens, whatever it is on the water. Inspiration.
Well, it's an amazing show because you are not only designing all of the environments for where these characters live and work, but on top of that, you're a theater designer and you're a scenic designer within the theater that you've designed. So this is sort of like, each one of these moments, if you will, of the process of that show is a huge undertaking in itself. So this is a very epic project to have kind of done all of that.
It's so funny because all my television shows have been epic, like literally, because I was a film person, and the first TV show was Kings, which is a unique show. It's an incredible show. If you ever end up looking for something to see, check it out. It was on NBC, but it belonged, like Smash, both Kings and Smash belong to HBO. They're just simply not, the format is not organic to broadcast television. Does that make sense? They just need more shooting days and more money and more care, which is what HBO will give you, which the cable shows will give you. And Kings was epic. Kings was a biblical story about David and Goliath set slightly in the future in New York, with NBC. And I had never done a television show. I had done pilots, but never done 10 episodes or whatever. They were 12 episodes, I think, that we did. 12 episodes. It's a good thing. Sometimes ignorance is a bliss, because I had no idea what I was in for. I had no idea that I had 3 weeks to come up with a concept for the new city, which is this, to show to the studio, to sell them on it, so then the visual effects people can do. Now, this is 2008, so visual effects were still not as integrated into our work as they are today.
Right.
So, but I'm coming up with a whole new city. So there you go. So then you go to the concept artists and stuff like that, and the city, this tower, which is the big sort of Congress, in a sense, Hall of Congress for the new world. And anyway, it was a phenomenal experience. I loved everyone on this. I'm really good friends still with the showrunner Michael Green, who still went on to write Logan, and a great career.
Sorry.
No,
Where did you turn to for inspiration for the city?
For the city, I was looking. My first go-to person is Zaha Hadid. Always. Her architecture and her thinking she's a genius, and she was so ahead of everybody 25 years ago. We're now catching up with her, and we can build her buildings. She came up with these buildings before the technology was there.
Wow.
And that is just I wish she was still alive. But everybody, and Jean Nouvel, the two architects that there's many more now, but when at that time in 2008, those two architects were what I was looking at. And I was looking at Dubai. Dubai was being built at the time, so you can tell that it's got that Dubai vibe. But the bottom needed to be New York, and the top so the tower with the top was this glass, the interesting thing, and the bottom was the public library on 42nd Street. So there was a lot of very interesting combinations and things, and it was massive. And I don't know how not to do an epic show. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I thought all television was like that. I got to be honest. I just thought, wow, this is like rock and roll,
Yeah. So we have a guest watching. Michael Susi is here. He says hello to you.
No way.
Since he's here, why don't we jump to a project you two collaborated on that won you an Emmy Award, and that is Grey Gardens.
Oh, Michael.
What a project this was.
Yeah.
I mean, a beautiful film, and jumps so many timelines, and you really tell a color story here. I don't even know where to begin, but I know this was another one that was very kind of quickly thrown together with very little prep time as well, right?
Well, Michael, here's the thing. Michael was the genius behind it because he had actually started a project. It was supposed to go a year before we did it. We did it in 2007. He was going to go with it prior the previous year, and then it got pulled out, and HBO pushed it to the next year, to the production slate for the next year, which is kind of how I ended up getting the job, because at the time was a different designer. And Michael and I met. We had an interview, an epic interview, of which we just recognized kindred spirits immediately, and he can say that is true. He's there. But we just kind of fell in love with each other. We were just like, okay, we're two crazy people. We're gonna do well. But as crazy as we are, we're also incredibly prepared people, and very thorough people, and very passionate people. And Michael had done on his own a SketchUp of the entire house. He had done such profound research on it. He grew up in that area, and he knew he knew so much about the 80s, and he was so well prepared. And I don't think I've ever seen a director come to me with a SketchUp model. So
Wow.
Given the fact that we had 7 weeks of prep and then 7 weeks to shoot, and with all the challenges of doing it in Toronto, you can imagine what an incredible help that was, that we actually weren't starting from zero. We had the character. We had the main character of our show, aside from the two actresses, obviously, but the house is the third character in it. And all we had to do, and it's not all, it was a big all, we had to convince people, studios and other people, to build it, to build the facade, and to build the interiors. And while I don't think we got pushback for the interiors, we got a pretty serious pushback on building the facade. And so the idea was, well, can't you find a house and put the porch to it?
Mm-hmm.
And both of us knew that was very tricky in Toronto. And it's a unique house. It's not like any other house. It's not a typical house. Mm-hmm. And the other thing also is, we both were so passionate about the project, but we were also so much about authenticity, because we believed that if we don't do justice to these characters, if we don't ground them in reality, and there's the facade. Clearly, we won this battle, but we could build only a portion of it. It's only like a couple of angles of it that you can get. It's not a 360 world. Mm-hmm. But it was great. It was great that we won this battle, and we also, the other thing that Michael and I had to work a lot on is the aging process of it. But what I mean about the authenticity is so important, because you want to ground these characters in reality. You want to believe, and you want to see the madness coming in, and you want to feel that incredible. When you get to the beauty of this house, how it sings and how it's full of music, and they're singing and they're dancing, and the joy and the beautiful life they had, you want to feel the loss of that by the time you get to the 70s, to the 60s and the 70s. So this is where we had substantial greens department to obviously trees, everything. And we knew also we had built an audience that was very, very interested in authenticity and was passionate about these characters,
right,
and knew them intimately. So we felt we had a responsibility, which is kind of what was our argument and how we won the battle. So this is when the house is singing and dancing and beautiful and joyful, and you really just wanted to feel that. And so this was, I did some color sketches. I had a happy accident.
Oh, I love this story.
I was planning on wallpaper, and we ordered wallpaper, period wallpaper from Secondhand Rose, that source.
Yeah.
And when it arrived, it had a stripe on it that we had not noticed on the little sample on the computer. Right. And because you're in Toronto, you're not in New York, you're not running to the store to look at it in person, you're judging it by what's on the computer screen. So they made one wall, and they called me in and said, you have to come in. And I came in and I went, oh my God, it looks like pajamas. It's got a stripe. It looks like freaking pajamas. I called Michael, and we both just looked at each other. We knew it. It was like, no, we cannot have this. So so out of disaster, you remember how, like I told you in our little chat, how sometimes the most brilliant decisions come out of necessity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Moments where we had to think on our feet, and I just looked at Michael and I said, I have an idea. I have an idea. Let me try something. And I went to my scenes and we tried this technique, and I just said, they're royalty. It's purple. It's going to be purple. Let's treat them as royalty with the gold and the purple. That's the, and I think it's a much better choice than our wallpaper, to be honest, because we had so much other wallpaper to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does speak to the color story of the character. I know that you'll often write treatments about characters to kind of create your vision, your world of who these people are. Does color often play into those very early kind of discoveries of who these characters are? Where do they come from? What color might you associate them with? Is that sort of part of your process on every project from early on?
Very much so. It depends. It really depends on the time frame that I have in prep, whether I can write a full bio or not. But I definitely ask enormous amount of questions about the characters. I always want to know, okay, well, what happened to them before they got here, before this environment that we're finding them in, and how much money do they make? Who is I just ask a lot of questions, almost like a detective. You're trying to piece together these characters and then interpret them. I very often, when I read a script, I have a colors start forming in my head. Believe it or not, I kind of have an emotional color reaction. So very often, even in my interview, I would come with images and color palettes and ideas. And what Michael and I had talked in the interview, and we were very true to that idea, was European Art Deco. I said, all right, so it's the 30s. We started the house in the late 20s, early 30s. It's raging Art Deco, but American Art Deco is so geometric and masculine. And these women are none of that. And also it's so confining. American Art Deco is very strict. It's got a very kind of powerful, strict feel to it, and European Art Deco. So this is one of these ideas that we had. Also playing with the colors of the yellow and room with the turquoise. We wanted to get some of these colors earlier, but in a different way. And also Michael had another document. He had a beautiful document that is Little Edie describing what the house looked like in the 30s. There are no photos of the house in the 30s. They're only verbal descriptions. And if you're going to believe Little Edie, it sounded like an insane house. It was like something like black carpet and red trim and green trim. I mean, it just sounded like, whoa. So we took these words, green and red and black, and then we incorporated them in our own way. This is actually this room is the mother's room, is in an actual physical location. And this came out of necessity because our facade, it was on the same grounds as the facade. So, and so as we would shoot half a day at the facade, we would run then and shoot this for the rest of the day. And then we would then start aging the facade. We started with the pristine look on each set and went chronologically to the 70s, to the really, really bad look. And so we hand painted all of this.
And that's a lot of work on your part too, to make sure the scenics are never aging it too far or too little. You have to find that perfect balance, right?
Yes. I don't think I ever slept on that show. I'm not sure. I think sleep was optional. But when you care and you love something, you don't notice that.
Right.
Honestly, but yes, we did go too far. And the last, I felt that, oh, this is great. This was a very lucky. There was a frost. This just naturally happened. There was a frost. Wow. And Michael was like, I have to get this. I have to have this. And they ran out and got some shots of that, because we were actually scheduled to shoot in the bedroom. But just a beautiful, again, happy accident. So you can see the progression in the aging and in the green. And again, the designer oversees so many departments. It's the painting department, the construction department, the set dressing, the props, the greens department. It's a big job. And so, yes. This is us later. Yeah. This is in the 70s.
And there we can see that purple is reintroduced in a very distressed manner.
Yes.
So this is the same room that we saw earlier, that beautiful rendering, and now this is when Jackie comes to visit, right?
Right, exactly. And really, our goal was that when Jackie comes to visit and you're with her as the audience, you can feel the smell. We wanted you to walk in as if you're walking with her and go like, oh, this smell. And it's like
watching an episode of Hoarders with the smell-o-vision. Right?
Yes. This is all based, now there are photos of this. So this is based on actually the way the house was. And again, the ladies didn't have valets anymore and servants. They didn't know how to take care. So they just open a can, throw it behind the shoulder, and that's it. And
this is all the cat food, right?
That's all the cat food. And we calculated that we needed about 12,000 cans. Oh. All period labels, all hand painted, all that, all. That's
insane.
So we ended up with 2,000, and underneath we made chicken wire piles, and then we can move them around a little bit like musical. And there's our famous portrait. Yeah.
And the portrait follows us through the rooms throughout the story too.
Yes, it did.
Wonderful. Yeah. We are we're running out of time, so we should probably jump on to another project.
I know you collaborated with Michael again on The Vow, and Rachel McAdams' character is a sculptor, and there's something special about the sketches and art you used. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh. Well, those are mine. I became a sculptor on that show. I felt, again, I feel very strong about the characters in any project that I do, and I kind of feel like I identify with them. And so Michael and I pitched him some ideas about the three different steps of what she would be as a young artist, as a young female artist. And at the time, I was doing a lot of drawings of corsets and Victorian undergarments, because they were so constructing to women. And I was just kind of doing a lot of charcoal sketches on that. It was just literally what I was spending the summer doing before the project. And so it kind of went into the work. And so her first sculptures have these corsets and they're binding, and then they become more natural and they become more like these women that are trees and they're bending to the wind, but they're resisting the wind. And then at the end, they're almost like they're very tall and free and jazz and dancing. And so there were 3 different periods in her sculptures, but it all came, and Michael's sister is an artist. So he is so well versed in art and he lives with artists and sculptors, and so it was really fun to discuss those and come up with our own, artwork for her. But yeah, so those are my sketches, and then those are the textures that and so you can see the first phase and the second phase. You can see the ballerina with the constricting corset going into the women trees, and we did small models of them, and then we did them like they were 9 to 12 feet tall after that. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. And so all this artwork on the studio wall, these are all your sketches as well, right?
In this particular instance, yes. And sometimes we will hire artists. I mean, if you have a painter, sometimes it's also typical to have to hire a different painter to be the painter that represents the artist, right? I don't, just in this particular instance, it worked out that that he went with this idea and he liked what I was doing. Had he not liked it, then we would have hired somebody else, and it would have been just as fine. By the way, I would have not shed tears. I'd have not taken it personally.
Was this a location or a set? The studio.
This is a location that is cut in half, and so it's cut in half and made smaller and dressed fully. So it's an empty warehouse that we built some walls to cut it in half to make it smaller. And so that's her last period.
Very good.
Yeah. See how they're free and they're dancing. They've unchained themselves.
Yes. Oh, they're poetic and beautiful.
Yeah.
So let us. We're at about 150 now. I want to talk for a moment about an initiative you started a few years ago that I know is very near and dear to you, and that is the Production Designers Collective.
Yes.
I'm going to bring that up here on the screen in a moment. But if you don't mind sharing sort of how that came to be and what your mission is with that group.
So I'm a co-founder with a wonderful young designer, Inbal Weinberg. And about 5 years ago, she came to a lecture I gave about production design. And she said, do you mind having coffee with me sometime? I have an idea about creating a production designers magazine. And I said, that's so very funny, because I've been thinking that we need a production designers society. And we both live in New York. So we met in a coffee shop, and we quickly realized that we were not interested. We were interested to bring people, to make a global, to connect designers across the globe. We were not creating a New York only centric or LA centric or only American institution. And so she called it the collective, and we came up with the idea that a virtual society is the best way. And I insisted that we don't charge money. I said, if we want to have members, we better be free. So it's the two of us. It's me and her. So we don't get paid. We spend a lot of time connecting people. And within 5 years, we have over 500 members. And now, because of COVID, we've been doing Zoom meetups every week, and it's been and we have between 60 to 100 people visiting and participating in these Zoom meetings. And we're here to bring colleagues together, to have a forum to talk about our production design issues, but to elevate the craft and to talk about how we collaborate with the other artists. So our upcoming seminar tomorrow is she invited two DPs and I invited two DPs, and we're having a session about how to collaborate, how DPs collaborate with designers.
Right.
We do the same with costumes, and we do the same with every department and every artist, VFX, you name it. Because since we create the physical world, everybody embodies our world. Everybody comes as a guest into our world, right? So we interact with every department. And we interact, including with sound. We help sound too, And so there's a lot of So this is, and so every 2 months we publish a digital magazine, and we alternate. We decide on the topics together, and then 1 month, every 2 months she finds 4 people, and every 2 months I find, the next time I find the other 4 people, and we interview them on a topic, and we publish it, and we go from there. And the last issue was on VFX, and how we as designers, where do we see the future of VFX? Where do we see the future of VFX in terms of how it's structured within the art department, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of different kinds of opinions, and it's awesome. And it's just a very casual format, which is what I like about it, because I love what I'm doing right now, because it's casual. I'm at home. I think this is really a way to share ideas. I'm always very big on sharing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's really fulfills my mission. And listen, if you want to go over the hour, we can. I know. Okay. I was more like I didn't want to become a runaway train in 2-hour session.
It just disappears. The time just disappears because we're all here talking about what we love.
Yes,
and so it really is kind of more fun than work. At least we hope. And the Production Designers Collective, I heard about it first when I first reached out to you about a month ago, and I've since become a member, and I have just spent so much time on here. There are so many amazing resources too, and it's really wonderful to see how many designers are part of this global community, and how each person brings their own artistic voice and flavor. And so I really have to thank you and Inbal for creating this, because it's an amazing resource, and something like this had never really existed before. So that's a really amazing thing that you've done for our community, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. This is what we felt. We felt that everybody who created, like even Perspective Magazine, really deals only specifically with kind of what we know as the Academy movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really go into independent films, for example, as much, or global films as much. And we both felt 5 years ago, I mean, she's from Israel and I'm from Bulgaria. I think naturally we feel global citizens, even though we're both Americans. We are still, well, I don't know if she's an American actually, but I am. I feel, it's so interesting. When the first passport I was given out of Greece to arrive in America was a white passport, and I was a citizen of the world, because nobody could claim me. I was not an American citizen yet. I was not a Bulgarian citizen, and I was definitely not a Greek citizen. And so I was literally my family, we had a white passport, and I don't think I ever got over that. I felt so empowered by that moment of holding a global passport. I belong to the world. There is, here I am, totally free. And I just always felt that our business is and our art form is very global. And now obviously with the internet makes it so much easier, but it's so much fun. I mean, we had a Japanese colleague talk to us about VR and SketchUp, and we had a British designer. We invited Uli, who designed Babylon Berlin, one of my favorite shows, and he spoke. We're having Barbara Lane come in and speak about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I mean, these are people from such different backgrounds and countries. It's so great to be able to speak to people and hear different perspectives,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I always share with my theater colleagues, we've spent so much time, I design primarily for theater, and we spend so much time in these windowless sort of black boxes, trying to create worlds that are shedding some truth about the human experience and life in the world. And you can really only do that if you're connecting yourself with other people from around the world, understanding different cultures, going out and traveling yourself. I know that traveling is something that you're very passionate about. And the painting behind you, my mother is actually asking about the painting behind you. I know that was inspired from a recent trip you took to Morocco.
Yeah, this is my comment. You ask me what do I do now, how to stay creative. Well, that's what I've been doing, because we were so lucky that we traveled and we came back on February 16th from Morocco. And so in that country is full of such amazing colors and images. And so I have been going and painting. I have a painting a week. I do a painting a week on my memories and photos and just memories from Morocco and the beauty and this world, and keeps me creative, and it keeps me engaged, and I crack up about it, because when I was in Bulgaria in 3rd grade, my very communist teacher told my mother that I had zero talent as a painter, but he is an artist, by the way, but she was going to give me an A for effort, because I really wanted to do it. I didn't want to inspire everybody that's been told in 3rd grade that they're a loser artist. No, you're not.
Well, my mother just said it's exquisite, so I know she's not the only one to say that. It's beautiful work that you've been sharing on your Instagram and all that as well.
Thank you. And it's interesting, because when you take a picture of it and you put it on Instagram, it's not the same thing as the painting being in the environment,
right,
and the scale and the size and the emotion of the brushes. So paintings are not easily represented by photographs. But anyway, it is, for me, just moving brush on canvas is a very joyful experience. It's like, that's why I insist on designing my own sketches first, black and white sketches. And I hope we can do a session on Lovecraft Country, because I did so many different worlds in that show. And the reason I think it's like, as a designer, it's like literally the pinnacle of my career, because every single style that I've ever done and I've been trained to do, I did in that show. So from the future to the past, to musical numbers, to non-musical numbers, to serious drama, to this, to that, to monsters. You don't get a show like that very often, and so I hope we get a chance to do something about it, because it's really it's very, very, it was an amazing experience.
That's wonderful. Yes, hopefully we will be able to continue this program in some form or another after the quarantine and reconnect to talk about some of that stuff. I will say, I will ask you now if you're ready for the big question, Kalina, which is, what is your hope for the future of the industry?
I think that of this situation that we're in right now, a lot of innovation is going to come out, because obviously we cannot shoot and film the same ways we have been filming. So we have to rethink the way we do things. Are we going to be able to go to the same big giant locations, public places that we used to? Clearly, we can no longer go to hospitals, not particularly at the moment when they're servicing people and helping the community. So what happens when there's a lot of innovation comes out of restrictions. It's the same, it's kind of like why you need a budget as a designer, to be honest, because believe it or not, that helps you, because otherwise sure, it sounds great to have a big budget, but sometimes the most innovative sets come out of the restrictions and the limitations that you have, because you have to think on your feet. And so I'm extremely hopeful, because I think that we're going to come up with new ways of doing it. We already are experimenting with some new ways, like Mandalorian. I think that's probably where we're going. A lot of more virtual backgrounds that does not eliminate the designer, does not eliminate the director, does not eliminate the jobs. Just the nature is going to become different. But we get hired for our conceptual thinking. For what we bring to the table as designers is our passion, our sense of color, our sense of character, and our support for the director's vision. At the end of the day, we're there to support the director. And I was asked recently a question by a student: have you ever overruled the director? And I just said, no. Why would I? I said, I would carry my vision to the point of where the director says, no, you know what, I really, really want us to move on. And I would be, absolutely, you got it. And we'll pivot and we'll come up with another idea. It is their vision, and that's very important to respect. But I think all of us in the film business, we're all thinking, we're all talking to each other. Believe it or not, there's a lot of conversations are happening right now.
Mhm.
But I think as the artists, we're thinking of like, okay, so how do I approach the future? And so I've been learning a lot about Unreal Engine and a lot of other things, and just the future of the technology, and how I fit in it. But you remember when Pixar came out, and they were the first studio to do computer-generated animation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody said
1995 Toy
right.
Story.
And everybody said, oh my God, nobody's going to draw anymore. And I went like, that's not true. You still have to do it by hand. And even if you're using that wand, you're still doing exactly the same what you do. It's just you're doing it on a glassy surface versus on a paper. And the irony of all ironies is if you look at the Pixar books, they all start with a hand drawing. They go to the computer later. And as a matter of fact, we had a session with ILM, Industrial Light and Music, Magic. That would be my company, Industrial Light and Music.
Well, there is a certain musicality to all of it, isn't there?
Yes, there's this Industrial Light and Magic. But anyway, they actually, when they hire concept artists, they insist that they know how to draw by hand. So as you can see, that's not a lost art. And I draw on iPad. I use a lot of programs. I'm very comfortable. It's just not the same. It's not like feeling a brush on a big surface. Also, my iPad is not 30 inches by 40 inches,
Right.
So it's not the same space. And but anyway, I am very hopeful. I'm actually very hopeful. I think this forced vacation for all of us is a good time to learn new tools, to learn new things, and to really talk about certain things like producers are now talking about 10-hour shooting days. There's some very, very interesting, good, positive things going to come out of this. And I just feel it's my time to learn more. This is what it's been given to me.
Absolutely. And may the learning never end, right?
It never ends. No.
Well, Kalina, this has been so nice to have you here. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And
thank you very much.
We're certainly looking forward to Lovecraft Country and to the rest of your career, whatever that may bring. So
hey, I just practiced painting, so maybe that's the future. I don't know.
Well, we can't wait for your solo show at MoMA in a few years.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone. I know every time we do this show, it's like we could just go on for hours and hours and hours.
She has a wealth of knowledge, experience to talk about.
Yeah, and so much beautiful work. So go ahead and check out her website. We scanned through some of it today, but Kalina Ivanov, .com. You can look at some more of her work and then find the films and television programs on your streaming services as well. I received a message yesterday from a viewer in Serbia, and although I have yet to respond to that message, I just wanted to say here, I understand that there is sort of a desire to see more visuals in this program. There's also a desire to share a little information beforehand of some of the shows and films that we're going to be talking about on the show. Truth be told, much of this is very, here's that word again, organic. Our conversation just sort of happens. We have a pre-conversation with our guests and talk for an hour or 2 hours about whatever. And once we're on live, we really just kind of let the conversation ramble in a direction wherever it kind of goes. So, we will do our best moving forward to kind of hint at some of the projects we'll be talking about. But I do appreciate everyone for tuning in from all around the world and enjoying these conversations. This has been a really nice opportunity to take a little time and talk to designers that are very busy and very rarely have the opportunity to sit down and talk with us. So anyway, I'm blathering on at this point. Karen, have you anything to say to our guests?
Yeah,
home?
we're very excited for next week. We're going to have Lydia Marks join us on Wednesday, the 13th.
An amazing set decorator.
And our first set decorator on the show. And she's decorated iconic sets, including Sex and the City 1 and 2, Devil Wears Prada, Away We Go, Schenectady, New York, and most recently Maniac and Fosse Verdon, and 7 Seconds, which she actually worked with Kalina. Kalina was the designer on that series. So check out some of her projects if you have the time while you're quarantining, and stay safe and well.
Indeed. All right, everyone, be well. We will see you on Wednesday. See you on Wednesday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good weekend. It's so cold in here.